This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
The theater to the new Odyssey movie better be empty.
This is the entirety of it. I don't know.
With helmets that combine Batman with Power Rangers, and Tom Holland's Telemachus dressed more like something out of Asterix and Obelix than the Odyssey.
And it's like just Nolan bots, just like, oh, peak incoming, oh, this is just peak cinema. Oh, imagine watching this on your phone, it's so stupid. But like nothing about it looks exciting. I don't know what it is. Think Stanley Kubrick. He was the person given this freedom at one point. And now what have we got in this day and age? We have Nolan. We have Christopher Nolan making sterile just rubbish.
Never in a million years would a Greek man, even a Bronze Age Greek man, have been caught dead wearing trousers. Never. Absolutely not.
In 2024, Christopher Nolan announced that his next film would be The Odyssey. With an A-list cast and a $250 million budget, nothing could go wrong. Despite the film not even being released yet, it has stirred up some controversy and debate, from the historically inaccurate costumes to the casting. Christopher Nolan, for those who don't know, is a director known for his movies The Dark Knight, Interstellar, Oppenheimer, Inception, and so many more. His films often have a very dark, gritty atmosphere and look to them, and with an insane track record of movies, people were excited to hear that he was making an adaptation of The Odyssey. But as trailers and photos started getting released, some people started not to share the same excitement. But before we can really get onto any of the drama, what actually is The Odyssey? This video is sponsored by Squarespace, an all-in-one platform that gives creators access to a variety of design tools that makes designing your website a fun and easy process. As you may or may not know, I've been using Squarespace to help create and design a website for my film club that is coming very, very soon. I love it because there are so many features that I can use to fully customize my website. If I ever feel lost or feel like I need some help, I can hop over to Squarespace Forums, which is full of a great community of people who are more than happy to help, discuss, and give advice to help you on your website building. The possibilities with creating are endless. If you want to showcase something in video format, you can easily add a reel or feature a behind the scenes clip, as Squarespace supports video beautifully, keeping it smooth and professional without any complicated plugins or tech headaches. And on top of that, Squarespace offers everything you need in one place with plenty of design templates, color and font options that help you design your website in any way you can imagine, leaving you with a website you are proud of. So try Squarespace for yourself using my link, squarespace.com/abbieree, and use code abbieree for 10% off your website or domain to launch your Squarespace masterpiece. Thank you, Squarespace, and now back to the video. The Odyssey is an epic poem by Homer, an ancient Greek poet, set in the world of the ancient Greeks, where the lives of gods, men, and magical monsters intertwines, telling the story of Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, who is trying to return home to his family after fighting in the Trojan War. But on his journey he faces storms, shipwrecks, a one-eyed giant, a witch, and a six-headed sea monster. And it's mythology, not fantasy, which we will get onto shortly. Homer has had his poems adapted many times in the past, one being the 2004 movie Troy, starring Brad Pitt, that is loosely based on the Iliad. The film that has been directed by Wolfgang Petersen was initially given to Christopher Nolan to direct. I was originally hired by Warner Bros. To direct Troy. Wolfgang Petersen had developed it, and so when the studio decided not to proceed with his superhero movie, Batman vs Superman, he wanted it back. But at the end of the day, it was a world that I was very interested to explore. So it's been at the back of my mind for a very long time. Certain images, particularly how I wanted to handle the Trojan horse, things like that, which is quite funny to think about now that he is doing an adaptation of The Odyssey. But why does Christopher Nolan want to do an adaptation on The Odyssey? In an interview with Empire, Nolan said, "As a filmmaker, you're looking for gaps in cinematic culture, things that haven't been done before. And what I saw is that all of this great mythological cinematic work that I'd grown up with, I've never seen that done with the sort of weight and credibility that an A budget and a big Hollywood IMAX production could do." He definitely did get a huge budget for this. Apparently, it's actually the most expensive Christopher Nolan movie from his career, so we'll see. And as you may be wondering, what does a Christopher Nolan The Odyssey film actually look like? Well, the world got a taste on December 22nd, 2025, and it divided nations. It divided households, stirred up a lot of drama, pretty much everywhere, if you are looking in the right places. The trailer. The trailer definitely made one side of the internet go into a frenzy. Historians, fans of Greek mythology, and many more were losing their minds, and not in a good way. Let me explain why. As we have mentioned several times already, the poems in which Homer wrote were Greek mythology, and the debate of mythology versus fantasy has come up a lot. So what actually is the difference between the two? Mythology is the study of myths in general, and the study of myths in particular to culture. A myth refers to a story that is supposed to have occurred at an unspecific time in the past. Myths often involve gods and goddesses, and they exist to explain particular natural phenomena or traditionally held beliefs. However, fantasy is imaginative fiction that is set in an imaginary world and features the magic of mythical beings and characters, such as supernatural or unnatural beings. Now you can see how the two get confused, as when creating a fantasy story, you may include things like mythical creatures and magic, but they are actually quite different. Mythology tends to consist of stories that were once believed as being true, growing from actual cultural beliefs, whereas fantasy, however, is made up, and people tend not to believe in it. When researching for this video, I found a little comment that explained it kind of perfectly. Fantasy is fiction that stipulates something not true in our reality is true for the setting of the story at hand. Now, as someone who didn't really know that much about fantasy or mythology before researching for this video, I can understand why people have so much to say about what we have seen so far about the film. So let's get into it, shall we? The trailer disappointed many people, with criticisms coming from the landscape and how it does not look Mediterranean enough, the overall atmosphere of the film being dark and gritty, with lots of deep colours, when the story was often described as being bright and vibrant. But then again, it is a Nolan film, so... The ship. Bro, the ship has caused so much drama. The ship they are using for the film has been criticised for being a Viking ship instead of a Bronze Age ship from the Mediterranean. With Skuld, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, a historian specialising in Viking studies on YouTube, finding that the ship was used as a reconstructed Viking longboat and sailed in 2016. The only positives I will say is the fact that he is using a real ship and not a CGI ship, even though he could have made it look a little bit less like a Viking ship. I still think that that's a benefit, that we're actually using real ships. And lastly, the costumes. The costumes by far are the most debated part, along with the casting, which we'll get onto soon. The debate around the costumes tends to be based on the historical inaccuracy of the armour and the costumes that the actors are wearing. There's a great video by Lady of the Library who discusses the inaccuracies within the trailer, and I'll leave this linked in the description of this video. Ultimately, the costumes and armour is getting compared to something you'd find on Temu, looking plastic and giving more of a superhero costume than handmade Bronze Age armour, with also the helmet getting criticised for mewing and looking like Batman. Now, on the other hand of the debate, you have people saying that it would look really goofy if they went with the historically accurate costumes, as they would look like human-sized woodlouse. But what I've gathered from watching a lot of historians and people on that side of the debate, it's not about the complete 100% historically accurate costumes, but he could have even based the costumes on that and just changed it to make them look more modern. It just does seem that he maybe has gone more of the Viking route. We'll see what happens. There has also been a rumour online that probably hasn't made things any better, and I don't know if it's true or not, but allegedly Demetrius Katikis, an artist and researcher who creates handcrafted armour that is historically accurate. His armour has also been in many museums to help replicate that time and present it in a museum. The drama comes as a screenshot of a Facebook post has kind of leaked and gone semi-viral over the internet. The post is by Demetrius that reads, 2.5 months ago I received an email from one of the main collaborators, a very well-known professional Hollywood costume designer of Christopher Nolan. The proposal for collaboration had to do with the armour of the film's protagonists, as we're referring to the Mycenaean era. They had seen my recent work on the internet and thought that they should present the heroes with realistic armour. Unfortunately, there was no follow-up in communication. The result is that once again, low-fidelity armour from a wardrobe that refers to the classic period is used. A unique opportunity for historical realism was lost. On the same post, he allegedly commented that the reason the collaboration didn't happen is because of scheduling conflicts, and filming had already started and they wanted the armors quickly, which couldn't happen. Ultimately, I think this was blown a bit out of proportion, as people saying he was ghosted, etc. But it sounds more like that if this did happen, that there was just scheduling conflicts and for some reason they really needed costumes then and there, which Demetrius couldn't provide. Some people did comment and point out that this doesn't really make sense, with one person on Reddit saying, "This is unsustainable and doesn't make sense with regards to how production schedules work. They would not be making initial contact about the lead actor's wardrobe so close to principal photography." Whether it is true or not, it's been interesting to have seen what it would have looked like in the film. Let's talk about the cast.
My issue with Christopher Nolan's Odyssey casting is that it gives me the same vibe of whenever there's an announcement on Twitter and a teenager says, "Oh, you know who should be casted in this? It should be," and they only list actors who are super famous currently or are from the last very big movie that they saw.
Like I briefly mentioned earlier, the cast is full of A-list actors with Matt Damon, Tom Holland, Zendaya, Anne Hathaway, Robert Pattinson, and so many more. Ultimately, one of the problems that people have with the cast is the fact that some of these actors don't look as though they belong there. With some of the actors, especially Tom Holland and Hathaway, looking like they've never seen the sun in their lives, when they're meant to be from the Mediterranean, with people asking why didn't they just give them a bit of a tan. It is also funny how Matt Damon's in another Christopher Nolan film with him just wanting to get back home. There's also rumours that Lupita Nyong'o would be playing the role of Helen of Troy, which then was reposted by someone who said Helen of Troy was fair-skinned, blonde, and the face that launched 1,000 ships, because she was so beautiful that men started a war over her. Casting choices that make the premise incoherent are admissions that the story was never the point and an insult to the author, in which Elon Musk, of all people. You don't understand, I had to go through his Twitter to find this reply. I can't even talk about it, it's traumatic. Elon Musk commented on the post saying, "Chris Nolan has lost his integrity." Now I just want to say, it is one thing to criticize a casting, okay? I've spoken about casting criticism a lot on this channel, but some of the lengths these people went to write disgusting racist comments on this post was completely disgusting and uncalled for. It makes me so mad and so just disgusted. Like, you can criticize someone for being cast, right? But when you come after them in a way that I saw in these comments, like, it's horrific. To her defense, Whoopi Goldberg replied to Elon Musk saying, "Oh, you know, because Homer described his fictional character as fair-skinned, blonde, who was so beautiful that men started a war over her. I don't know if you realize this, Lupita is also considered one of the world's most beautiful women. So I'm not sure what you're trying to say. You don't actually have to go to the movie. See, I don't know why you feel the need to speak on this. I would suggest looking in the mirror if you have any concerns about people's looks, if this is where we're going. Don't bother to clown me, baby. I know what I look like. There's so many things I want to say to you that are rude and awful, but I won't do it. But know that I'm thinking it. Elon, just sit down for this. When it comes to artistic stuff, go sit down, please." Nolan is creating his vision of the Odyssey. We can tell that by what we have seen so far. His vision, as we know Nolan to be, is probably going to be much more darker, grittier. I imagine it's going to be more like a superhero type vibe to it. And just to add, I did find a post on Reddit that I think just sums up a lot of people's concerns. This post had 2,000 likes on Reddit, which is crazy, and that was a day ago, so by the time this video goes up it's probably had more. But this is basically what it says. "I'm tired of Hollywood turning foreign myths, cultures and history into slop and Christopher Nolan too. Yes, this post is about the Odyssey. To get things out the way, yes, the Odyssey is a myth, but it's still based on specific historical context. We know that Trojan really existed. We know that the Greeks besieged the city. We know what the city would have looked like, what people would have worn at the time, etc. It's not Narnia or Westeros or Middle Earth, but that's how Nolan is approaching this project, based on everything we have seen so far. I hate that none of the actors look like they're from the Mediterranean. They didn't even bother to give Matt Damon or Tom Holland a tan. I hate that the armor and fashion has more in common with a B-tier fantasy show like The Rings of Power than real history. I hate that the architecture has more in common with a modern hotel than ancient Greek buildings. Whenever you mention any of these very valid criticisms, you will be ultimately drowned out by Nolan writers who tell you that you shouldn't care about historical accuracy because it's just a myth. Except you'd obviously recognize the problem if they made a movie about the journey to the West with a predominantly white American cast, with sets that looked more like the Caesar's Palace Casino than ancient Asia. That would very obviously be insensitive and disrespectful and would rightfully be called out. But because Nolan does it, it is suddenly okay. Off. It was awful when Hollywood did it. Middle Eastern / American myths and history. Gods of Egypt and that horrible Moses movie by Ridley Scott. It was awful when Hollywood did it to Native American myths and history. See almost any movie about the colonization of the Americans. And it's awful now. This isn't just about historical accuracy, it's about mega conglomerates like Disney, Warner Bros and co. Taking foreign cultures and dumbing them down into neat little marketable packages. Nothing is sacred to corporate America. Today's question in the comments is, what are your thoughts on the Odyssey so far, and where do you stand on the debate? Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this movie drama breakdown, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!